Okay, hello everybody. I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. Mhm. There we go. Can you guys all see that?
Yes, you're good to go.
Okay. Oopsie. So I'm gonna actually I want to go back because I would love to share this QR code for a classroom management Padlet that I've created. And I've added to this Padlet every training I've done. So teachers add information on this Padlet, administrators, other coaches, things that may be useful in the classroom, TK, all the way up to 12. And we also have the social emotional learning Padlet. This has information for SEL learning, different things that you could use digitally, but also visuals and different resources that you could connect to as a teacher. All right, so I have a couple tips for you guys today. The main one I get asked about a lot is power struggles. This is something we see in preschool all the way up to high school. So here are some tips I have for avoiding power struggles, because the best way to deal with them in the classroom is to avoid them altogether. So if you do say no to something, remember it is a complete sentence. You don't have to go back and argue why you're saying no. Sometimes no is just no. It's easier sometimes in classrooms to provide a choice if you have a student that you know is going to be refusing a task or just trying to get out of work. Providing a choice is helpful. Sometimes you might say, you know what, you could do problems 1 through 5 right now, and then 5 through 10 later, or you could do the front first, then the back. Sometimes with students that have ADHD, things that have a lot of words on them, worksheets, paper, problems that you may give a student for independent practice, it's overwhelming. Sometimes I like to fold it in half and just tell them, do the first half right now and do the second half when you're finished. Another way that you could avoid power struggles is first then statements. First, I need you to go to your seat, then I'll talk to you. First, I need you to write your name on your paper, then we'll work on number 1 together. This is a great way to just avoid a power struggle in general in the classroom. But one of the ones that I use when I get in a situation where the behavior is escalating, especially with younger students, this could be applied to older students as well, but distract and reset. So with those young ones, and I know I've been in a lot of those TK kinder classrooms this school year already, sometimes they dig their heels in and they do not want to follow directions or they don't want to move forward. You could offer them the world at that moment and they're just kind of set. So distract and reset is a great strategy that I use a lot. Sometimes I wait for an opening with the student when I see that they're getting ready to go into meltdown or tantrum or just refusing the task altogether. I might use something like a common interest to kind of open that door in that conversation. It could be something like, oh, I see that you're wearing Converse. Yeah, I have a pair of those too. I have like 4 colors. Something that you could just start a conversation with. With little ones, of course, you can look at what they're wearing. Sometimes I'll check out their t-shirt or their shoes. And, if they're wearing Paw Patrol or something, I'll say, oh, is that Paw Patrol? Now, don't get upset or feel like, ooh, I failed at this if they don't respond to you right away, because a lot of kids might not say anything to you when you try to distract and reset. The point of it is to kind of open the door for them to chat with you at some point. This has happened to me a lot. I've started a conversation with a kid, walked off, continued teaching, and they ignored me. Eventually, they came around and they would say something like, yes, Miss Barnwell, I do like Paw Patrol. Do you like Paw Patrol? Once that door is open, Then I start talking with them, making sure they're de-escalated. And then when I see the opportunity, I circle back to the request that was given in the first place. And I usually make it pretty simple, like, once I need you to go sit in your seat for me, and then we'll finish this conversation. Or I need you to go sit in your seat and then let's walk to lunch. So distract and reset is a really good strategy when you're dealing with behaviors that may escalate. Setting clear limits. This is huge. If you have clear limits in the classroom, you have your visuals up, you've taught your procedures and your routines, typically the amount of behaviors you're going to see is definitely going to be less, because you could use other strategies. You could fall back on pointing to your visuals so you can avoid arguing with the student. You could fall back on, remember rule number 3. All of these limits that teachers set in their classroom are ways to fall back on these strategies when behaviors occur. I do have a couple examples of clearly stating specific boundaries in the classroom. A non-example would be something like, if you don't finish your work, you won't have free time. First of all, I wouldn't suggest saying something like this for a couple reasons. What if they finish their work and then the class is over and you can't follow through with the free time that you offered? And usually when you start with a negative like this, if you don't finish your work, then you won't have whatever. Usually it just shuts kids down again. Something that you could change this to is, after your work is done, you'll have 5 minutes of free time. Get started. And also, a lot of teachers, when you are setting a limit or talking to a student, you're really using that proximity control, walking over to them. One of the things I try to avoid, though, is staying in that area with them too long. So if you do give them, you set a specific limit or a boundary, don't wait for them to comply standing next to their desk or in front of them, because sometimes this opens the door for argumentative behavior or escalates the behavior. So set the limit, continue teaching, come back and check in to see if they followed your direction. These are just some tips that I see all the time. Teachers use these, and I don't think that they realize how much they use these types of behavior management in the classroom. These types are really, we fall back on the least invasive form of intervention. For example, if I want to correct a student and I'm teaching whole class, most of the time I'm going to do an anonymous individual correction. I might say something like, I need everybody sitting up straight with their pencils out, or I need everybody to put their pencils away if I hear someone tapping, or it's becoming disruptive with the noise making because students are playing with their materials. I would fall back on that anonymous individual correction. I also might use a quick public correction. We see this a lot, where a teacher might say, Jeffrey, I need you to put your book away. Quick public correction, continue teaching. That private individual correction, that's when I've already used the anonymous, the quick public, and the student is still disrupting my lesson. I will walk over to him, I will lean in and say, I need you to put that away, or we might have to chat later. Positive group corrections, nonverbal intervention. A nonverbal intervention might be if you look at a group of students or a student and say, point to whatever visual you have up for your classroom management system. A positive group correction might be something like, look at group number 2, they're on task, thank you, 10 points if you have a point system in place. All right, repetition is key. Any behavior strategy that you're using in the classroom and that you find that is working, repeat, repeat, repeat. But when it comes to a student unlearning a behavior and learning a new behavior, there's a lot of research on repetition. For a student to learn something new, we have to repeat it on average 8 times. That's not including students with ADHD, students that might have some type of cognitive delays. Sometimes speech students need a little more repetition, but on average, 8 times. For a student to unlearn an old behavior, you have to repeat it, the new behavior, on average 28 times. So 20 of the times to eliminate the old behavior and 8 of the times so that they could learn the new behavior that you're teaching. A behavior that I see a lot with repetition, this type of strategy working, is that blurting behavior. If you have a student blurting in your class and say that you are trying to ignore the blurt, but keep your students, your whole class on track by restating what they need to be doing, but not giving any attention to the student that's blurting. Say that the blurting might be attention. The function of the behavior might be attention. So you do this 20 times and you see that the blurting is decreasing. It's still there because blurting is difficult, but it's decreasing. And then one time, it only takes one time for this student to catch you and say something like, Miss Barnwell, do we have 5 minutes until lunch? And if you answer them and say yes, then you have to start back at the beginning at 28 times because you reinforced the blurt right then. So blurting is one I see a lot of teachers trying to use a strategy to unlearn the blurting behavior. And then they're trying to teach the new behavior, which would be to raise their hand or to show them a signal, but it just takes that one time and then you have to start that repetition loop all over again. Okay, I think the last thing I have to share is the difference between discipline and management. Discipline is reactive, management is proactive. But the thing on this list that I like to really share out from this slide is that discipline stops defiant behavior sometimes, and management is there to promote that predictable behavior or produce predictable behavior, promote responsibility. And I'm not saying that discipline isn't something that is needed, because it is. Stop requests work. If I am teaching at the front of the room and a student is tapping and I say stop tapping, they're going to probably stop tapping for a moment. But what we see is that stop request doesn't last as long as I want. But that management piece, me teaching them what I want them to do, produces more predictable behavior. So a management piece with a student that might tap their pencil or pen all the time would be, when Miss Barnwell is teaching, all your materials need to be in your desk. That would be a piece of management, and that would produce predictable behavior. That's the most important thing, I believe, between discipline and management. And discipline is more reactive and management is more proactive. Okay. I think those are the tips that I have today.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing those, Amber. There was a question that came in about the links. Will you be able to send me a copy of that slide deck that you shared and I can send it out to everybody?
Yes, I will.
Perfect.